الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وأصحابه وبارك وسلم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Beloved Honorable Mufti Sahib, beloved Honorable Maulana Mu'adh, esteemed elders, students of knowledge, mashallah, young scholars, very happy to be back. Masjid al-Muslimin, mashallah, a model, most certainly, for the country and the African continent. Is there a link between what has been happening for several years on the African continent and what continues to happen and play out in West Asia? I refuse to use the term Middle East. It's a colonial construct, racist at its very core. Because when the British, essentially an arm of the Zionist fabric, when they started cutting up West Asia, they declared, henceforth, going forward, this will be classified as the Middle East. So I refuse to use this colonial construct. It is a racist term, it is a racist ideology, and it was intended to keep all the nations in West Asia divided. Divide and rule. So when we speak about the British, handing over occupied Palestine to those who came from Eastern Europe, it's the same system, the same entity. Like today, I would refuse to use terms like foreign national, because we have been bombarded with this now in the last couple of months. Yes? Foreign national, anti-immigrant, migrants. What is the link between that and what is happening in West Asia? You are all young scholars. You need to be able to decipher what is happening here in South Africa, on our African continent, in West Asia, and all over the world, because it is all linked. I will try my best in the 25 minutes to do justice so that we can actually connect the dots. So let's start in South Africa. We have entities like March and March, Operation Dudula. These entities, along with others, are spewing this narrative that our African migrant brothers and sisters, I prefer to use the term African migrant, and I will never use this racist, divisive term and phrase, foreign national, anti-immigrant. It seeks to just divide and rule us. It wants to divide the Sutus, the Tswanas, the Zulus, the Xhosas, and it wants them to despise their African brothers and sisters for a reason. For a reason. So look at these entities. Let's take the foremost one, March and March, led by Jacinta Ngobezi Zuma. Their call is for undocumented. What caused this undocumented scenario? It is the failure of Home Affairs. Done. How many South Africans are not undocumented? You want to worry about our African migrant brothers. How many local South Africans are not undocumented? You know what the estimation is? Over 7.8 million. It's way more than that. So you want to talk about undocumented. So they want to force undocumented, in their words, not mine, out of South Africa. And now, after their so-called June 30th shutdown, where they promised they would bring this country to a standstill, they failed. Because the agenda is to divide and rule African brothers and sisters. Divide them so that an entity that is engineering the agenda can then just reap from what has been left behind. So Jacinta, who leads this march in March, why did she go to the United States? She went to the United States, you can look this up. And she completed a scholarship and an internship program in the United States. And then her entity was granted funding by the National Endowment Fund for Democracy. My goodness. This National Endowment Fund for Democracy is an arm of the CIA. Known. Go and do your homework and you will find this information. I'm not thumb-sucking. So the National Endowment Fund for Democracy provided her with funding. They claim that due to them selling their t-shirts and their paraphernalia and memorabilia, that is making it possible for them to mobilize local South Africans across the country so that they can force what they believe illegal immigrants out of the country. Don't lie. Tell the people that you received your funding from the National Endowment Fund for Democracy. If you don't believe me, go and do your research. It is there, eh? It is there. It's a known fact. Now, this entity, the National Endowment Fund for Democracy, is an official arm of the CIA. Central Intelligence Agency. They don't exist only in the movies, eh? Hollywood has been lying to us for many, many years, getting us to eat up all their drivel and their lies. You see? The National Endowment Fund for Democracy, they also fund independent journalists. They fund political parties. They fund, for example, we are told that there is a genocide in China where the Uyghur Muslims are being persecuted and placed in concentration camps, right? A lot of you have seen the videos. People still forward these fake videos to me. The entity that represents or supposedly represents the concerns of the Uyghur is the World Uyghur Congress. And dear, oh dear, my goodness, this World Uyghur Congress also gets funding from the National Endowment Fund for Democracy. So, political parties like Action SA, Patriotic Alliance, Rise Mzansi, MK Party, who was the dark horse, they lied to South Africans 2 years ago, and now you see they're cozying up to Dula and March in March. Same thing with Floyd Shivambu. He's lost, man. Since he left the EFF, he's now cozied up also to Operation Dudula and March in March. They share the common thread. They all get funding from the National Endowment. Go and do your homework. You'll find that information. So, what is the aim here? To divide and rule. Get the Xhosas, the Zulus, the Sothos, the Tswanas to rise up against our Zimbabwean brothers, Malawian brothers, brothers from Mozambique, Tanzania, everywhere else, and force them out. And get us to fight one another. That's the aim. They have no pure intentions. Zero. And look where the funding comes from. Washington. And Washington belongs to Tel Aviv. The United States has got to remain at the beck and call of the Zionist entity. That's why they don't agree with the memorandum of understanding that was put together. The so-called ceasefire between the United States and the Islamic Republic of Iran. They don't want it because Netanyahu stated we are not a party to that. So we will not adhere to any of the founding provisions or the protocols thereof. And therefore they ordered the United States sent spy vessels into the Straits of Hormuz. This was about 13 days ago. The IRGC had credible evidence that these spy vessels and the illegal maritime traffic in the Straits of Hormuz was orchestrated by the United States. Yes. And now what have we seen? The United States continuing to attack several key installations and targets, power stations, water supply of the south of Iran. And now Trump is brandishing that he will attack Pickaxe Mountain and destroy Iranian infrastructure. Iran in West Asia remains as the last bastion of hope. Once that bastion falls, the Greater Israel project is complete. You know what is amazing? An honorable Sheikh Imran Hussein, may Allah still keep him with us for a very long time to come, inshallah, spoke about this more than 25 years ago. My goodness. And today, the mosques are closing their doors on him. But he spoke about all of this. What we see playing out, he spoke about more than 25 years ago. The Greater Israel project is in play. The buffer zone in Lebanon has been extended. So they've already usurped land from the south of Lebanon. 70% of Gaza is gone because it belongs to the occupation forces. That buffer zone and yellow zone is gone. And now they are toying with what? They are toying with what is classified as a model camp for Palestinians close to Rafah. It's nothing more than a glorified concentration camp for Palestinians, where they will place them in, provide them with running water, hot water, electricity, access to internet, etc., and vet who of the Palestinians should be placed in there. I'm not saying it's a glorified concentration camp. Even the Israeli media, they themselves, Haaretz, and even the Jerusalem Post, they are saying that is a glorified concentration camp. And what has happened to the Palestinians? The genocide continues, unabated. Who bankrolls the genocide? The United States. How much have they spent so far since 2023 to date on the genocide in Gaza? They've given the Zionist entity more than 31 billion. And now, the United States Department of War are hoping that Senate agrees to a $1.5 trillion budget for their so-called war on Iran. So what does this tell us? Do you think it's going to end tomorrow? No. So we saw a very brittle ceasefire and a memorandum of understanding. And now why are you requesting this budget? 1.5 trillion. What have they spent already so far? More than 48 billion on the illegal attacks on Iran. 28th of Feb, they illegally attacked Iran, calling it preemptive strikes. And even our mainstream media in South Africa, with the same blinkers, reporting the same narrative that you get from CNN, The Guardian, BBC, Fox News. Not thinking outside of the box, because it's the National Endowment Fund for Democracy that are funding our journalism. And they're even funding journalism in Africa. So you have Operation Dudula, March and March. It would not be possible for them to do what they're doing if they don't get the funding from the National Endowment Fund for Democracy. The CIA and Mossad, they work hand in hand. Brothers, sisters, it's the same source. You know that white Afrikaner genocide that they've been lying about? It's the same third force that came with this narrative and perpetuated by Elon Musk. And then the narrative continues. So that didn't work. So now you need to put our African brothers up against one another. That's what you need to do. You see? And now locals must become angry towards our African brothers. It's the failure of the ANC administration. Corruption. You see? Cadre deployment. That has caused this economic crisis we find ourselves in. Because the ANC cannot keep their hands out of the cookie jar. That's the problem. So now they have failed, but our government has also not remedied these xenophobic and Afrophobic tendencies, because we saw what it did in 2008. We saw what it did in 2021. So our government failed to remedy it, and our media plays a massive role in also, in a very latent manner and patent manner, to spew this narrative and this dynamic. It's the same thing. That's what they want. So if you go from South Africa and you go to Rwanda, Paul Kagame was installed in Rwanda in the 90s already. By who? Bill Clinton. Now actively for many years there's been a genocide in DRC Congo. Same system. Exact same system. So with that genocide in the DRC, the United States, through the Clinton administration, installed Kagame. He's been in there decades already. Eh? There's no opportunity for him to be relinquished unless his bosses in Washington and Tel Aviv decide we've had enough of you and he needs to be replaced. For now, they still have utility for him. So he has been arming the M23 rebels. This is your continent and my continent. These are what the architects and engineers have been doing for many years. And they want us, right? Sututswana against Ndebele Shona from Zimbabwe. Don't like the Chewa Malawi. Get him out. He's taking our jobs. So coming with these lies, man. Hey? So if their jobs are taken back and you force them out of the country, let's see what it's going to do for the economy. What has March and Dudula done in the last couple of months? Have we seen any improvement in the economy? Were jobs created for locals? Because it is an agenda. So the M23 rebels have been killing hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians from the DRC. So that Apple and company can gain access to the coltan, the cobalt, and the gold, because that powers up our catalytic converters, and without these resources, we will not have technology as it is right now. The United States, bankrolling what is happening through Kagame. Kagame then arms the M23 rebels. It's a genocide happening there. And we need to clearly define between Ebola outbreak and arsenic poisoning. You know, we must have intelligent investigative journalists that must actually look into this, because the symptoms are exactly the same. We need to look into that. And from DRC Congo, Sudan, who is the head honcho there in Sudan? The United Arab Emirates. They've been arming the RSF, Rapid Support Forces, that have been killing and displacing millions of Sudanese. South Sudan and Sudan, so rich in crude oil and gold. The kids are scratching in the sand and the crude oil comes out. Scratching in the sand and gold ore just appears just like that on the surface. The UAE has been funneling all that gold. And our tagline is, Habibi, come to Dubai. Huh? Off the backs of killing and displacing millions of Sudanese. And what they've done was they've also controlled the ports in Sudan. So the locals don't have no authority. And they've controlled the agricultural sector. But the people in Sudan are starving, eating cow dung. Yeah? Kids dying on the streets, forcing to flee. And the UAE, they signed the Abraham Accords in 2020. How close has the UAE gotten to Israel? They are like this. They share military tech. They share strategic partnerships. When Iran retaliated, calculated, those people, this Farsi nation, they are so intelligent. The United States will never be able to, never, unless they go nuclear. And that will cause a global collapse of the economy and millions of people will die. So, the UAE, profiting off the genocide in Sudan and stealing the gold and the crude oil and the agricultural sector. And it's actually a functional state for the Zionist entity. It's become very close. You saw now what happened, eh? When Iran was retaliating and sending drone and missile strikes, Bahrain, Kuwait, UAE, they were crying to Uncle Sam and to the Trump administration, please help us. Tell the Iranians to stop. Eh? So what happened? The Zionist entity helped the UAE with military tech because they are this close. They are a functional state for the Zionist entity. There is the proof. And they've also meddled in Yemen, put together, propped up a faction to try and take down Ansarullah. They are not going to succeed. They will not succeed. So the UAE is pretty much a proxy state for the Zionist entity. And the main proxy for the Zionist entity is the United States. Because AIPAC and the Zionist lobby, they control Congress, man. So whether the Americans are going to suffer, they need $1.5 trillion to continue the illegal war on Iran. That's where we stand. We connect the dots. Are we able to see that it's the same system? From this to Dula, March and March, to DRC, to Sudan, to the genocide in Gaza, continues unabated. The land grabs in occupied Palestine continues unabated. And now the Zionist entity became the first and only country, but they are an illegal entity, to recognize Somaliland. Yeah? Who caused all of this? Who caused Sudan to split? It was the Bush administration in the 90s, so that they can gain access to and control the gold and the oil. So now essentially the UAE would continue to do the bootlegging for Washington and Tel Aviv, because Washington is Tel Aviv, Tel Aviv is Washington. Same entity. As we would say locally, they are in the same WhatsApp group. No different. They all get the same broadcast, they send out the same information. Connected, all connected. So the United States is forced to cough up more money so the genocide can continue in the occupied territories. Done? And now why Somaliland? Because they've installed a military base in Somaliland. An Israeli military base. Go figure. You shouldn't be surprised. Why? So they can have a foothold on the African continent. And they've penetrated already. They have. Our neighbors just around the corner, Zambia, had the Israeli embassy closed for many years. A couple of months ago, reopened. Grand welcome to the Israeli ambassador in Lusaka. Why did the Zambians close it in the first place? Because they knew. You see the infiltration? They've infiltrated even in Botswana. The closest to South Africa that there is a US military base, AFRICOM, is the US military base in Botswana. How close is that to us? You drive from Joburg into Gaborone, a couple of hours. That's how close things are for us. That is how close it is. So now what happens now? With the Israeli military base in Somaliland, they believe they can keep an eye on Ansarullah. And they would be able to target Ansarullah directly. But Ansarullah has got something else coming for them. The Saudi-backed government in Yemen destroyed the airport in Sana'a. They killed, the Saudis killed thousands and thousands of Yemenis. That was a genocide. And now the Qataris and the Saudis are frantically running around because they are afraid. Because what could happen is, we see now in the Straits of Hormuz, 20% of the world's crude oil flows through there. Global fertilizer through there. All those fiber optic cables through there. So the nuclear weapon for Iran is the Straits of Hormuz. Yes. And now Trump has dangled the carrot before Saudi Arabia. You will be permitted to develop civil nuclear energy. Yeah? And your uranium enrichment will be capped to under 4%, provided you sign the Abraham Accords. That's where we stand, you see. Bab al-Mandab is a tiny little strait, even smaller. The difference there is, if the Saudis continue Because Ansarullah has already targeted Saudi ships passing through the Red Sea. Within 24 hours, Ansarullah can close Bab al-Mandab. We see the problems we're facing with crude oil now, $100 per barrel. Once the United States started attacking Iran again, because that's the instructions coming from Tel Aviv. So, essentially, what's going to happen now is, if they force the hand of Ansarullah, they will close Bab al-Mandab. 10% of the global wholesale supply of crude oil passes through Bab al-Mandab. Shut down. Crude oil will jump to $200 per barrel. And we're seeing the difficulties now with the Straits of Hormuz. And we are being told, you cannot support Iran because they are Shia. It's the only country, Muslim country on the planet, that is fighting for the survival of the free world. Now we mustn't worry, is Russia going to liberate Palestine? No, man. Stop talking about that nonsense. No. We need to focus on Africa, because the aftermath of all of this, because things are going to become even more detrimental. And we are heading towards a malhama. That is a certainty. Because there is no way of defeating the Iranians. An ancient civilization that knows the art of war. The United States, 250 years old. Persia, more than 3,500 years. You can just do the math yourself and understand. But they are working in a strategic and calculated manner, because things could have become much worse globally already. But Iran is continuing to cushion the blow on behalf of the free world. But we are told it's a regime. No, the regime is in Tel Aviv. The regime is in Washington. So we need to focus on what would be the way forward, the aftermath. Where do we go? Africa has a strategic role to play in the next few years. Guaranteed. So essentially, we must move away from March and Dudula with their lies and their propaganda, because it is to divide, rule, and conquer. That's the aim. And we need to ensure. So through an institution like this, we can actually see brighter minds are being developed through Miftahul Khair, Masjid al-Muslimin, to prepare you as a future scholar with a mind broad and understand the challenges that we face has to be addressed in a holistic manner. If I was able to connect the dots, alhamdulillah. If I didn't connect the dots for you, please forgive me. But my time is up. Once again, Jazakallah Khair to our beloved Mufti Masood, beloved Maulana Mu'adh, the ulama at Miftahul Khair, all the trustees of this beautiful masjid. This is a model. This is a model for South Africa and the African continent. Most certainly, it always inspires me coming back here. But why are we here? We're not here actually for politics. Tomorrow is the UWMAF National Championship at Patterson Park Recreation Center in Norwood. 12 of my students from the Western Cape, they've come up to compete. And we have 9 students and athletes from Miftahul Khair. They are known as Gauteng Jingwu Kung Fu. So you are the chapter of the north. And the boys that I brought, they're the chapter from the south. So both Gauteng, you, and Western Cape, them, will compete tomorrow. Come and pop in, inshallah, tomorrow. In fact, the Chinese ambassador and consul general is making a special visit tomorrow to the tournament to come and meet me and all the athletes from Mackenzie Park and also those who came up from the Western Cape, inshallah. Do your best. Spread the word. Let them know. Come and support them. And if you're not at Miftahul Khair and you left, this does not apply to you, because it's the accord and the agreement that we made with our beloved leadership. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.